Right, so cast your mind back to what Keir Starmer said about his Labour Party and what then Labour members, I'd hope a lot of those within earshot at that, decided to take him at his word when he said, if you don't like what I'm doing with the Labour Party, if you don't like the Labour Party as it is today and what I've made of it, then there's the door. Well, certainly plenty of people have, it seems, used that door, as the latest begging email sent out to Labour members is one of pleading poverty and of donations apparently drying up. Well, my sympathy extends to precisely zero over that. You wanted your Labour to be the party of big business. You wanted your party to be the party of millionaires. You spurned the membership you had, told them to get stuffed if you hadn't slung them out already on spurious charges as part of the Labour purge. Well, then maybe you wouldn't be in so much trouble now then, would it? Labour has been bleeding away paying supporters for years, and it has only accelerated more recently. So wouldn't the truth of the matter be more like the Labour Party simply can't afford to have Keir Starmer as their leader anymore? In which case. Right, so Labour are in financial trouble, having told anyone on the left they haven't purged to effectively do one. They don't like how the party's run these days. Did this some time ago now, and well, it looks like people have been acting on it. And given that the party now is run like a Margaret Thatcher tribute act, plenty have indeed, it seems, used that door. Whilst I've brought her up, of course, it would be remiss of me to not pass comment on today being the 11th anniversary of Thatcher's death. So everyone enjoy a bit of a ding-dong moment today in her memory. But it's not only that lurch towards Torylitism that has sent people packing, but the current leader too. Labour might be riding high in the polls ahead of the Tories, but as far as the party leaders go, both are in negative territory. It just goes to show that Labour's lead is built on sand, and Starmer is a total turn-off to voters. Just less of a turn-off than Rishi Sunak is. Some media are now carrying a story that Sunak's going to push the general election back as far as he legally can now, which would be to next January, as he continues to run away from an election he knows he's going to lose. Yet the longer he stalls, the more damage it seems to do to the Tory party, the more it actually helps Starmer. So other media debating whether the Tories will ditch Sunak even at this late stage, well, it might not be as mad as you might think, given how Sunak really is running them into the floor, not that they don't deserve abject extinction for the batshit way they're running the country and the daft ideas they're coming out with, hard right ideas, pinning their hopes on deportations, it seems, for their own survival. It's just the thought of a Starmer-led landslide when his poll lead is built on the Tories' implosion, and he's lied his weaselly black guts out to get where he is today. It just feels like he's being rewarded for being arguably one of the most dishonest politicians we've ever seen. And again, that plays into part of why he is such a massive turn-off when nationally the party continues to do well in polls. Starmer promised continuity Corbyn, and instead has delivered Blair on steroids. Where he promised 10 pledges of transformative change, he now promises absolutely nothing. His Chancellor, a Thatcherite who takes advice from George Osborne and poses in public lavatories. A change in government usually heralds great cheers and enormous lashings of hope. But that won't happen this time. Starmer will be detested from day one, just as he's detested already. The guy who got the job not for anything he stands for, because nobody knows what he stands for. And whatever he promises, you'd be daft to believe anyway, but for simply getting there by being the lesser of two evils. And he's on course for a supermajority at that, it seems, according to those national polling figures. Despite all of this, though, for too many people, countenancing voting another way than either of these two parties just doesn't seem to register. But unless more people start to do so, there is no hope of things ever actually changing. And a Starmer-led government will make that readily apparent. But perhaps we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Labour are, it seems, at a spot of financial bother. And I can't say I'm surprised, because by driving members away and telling them they don't matter, walking all over party conference as if that doesn't count, and essentially letting the donors come back to the party who don't donate without getting something in return, you can see that this is a party once again run for the few and not the many, and a continuation of Tory policies is on the cards. Blair built up massive debt doing just this, thinking this way, being the heir to Thatcher. Debt that persisted until Corbyn cleared it. It's amazing what happens when you put the party back in the hands of the ordinary working class people it was always intended to represent. But now that has been blown by the Starmer regime, and crucially, having chosen the road of Blair once again, Labour will end up racking up debts again. The donations might look good when the papers publish them. Oh, Labour's just got millions from this guy or that one, or one or two donors handed over vast sums of money, for instance. But they are obviously the exception. And Labour has always relied on its members, not only for the funding, but the campaigning too. They could never compete with the Tories and their megabucks backers to buy screen time and massive ad campaigns. Labour's weaponry was always conversations on the doorstep, word on the street, flyers through doors, the doorstep campaign. It's no secret this is why the party makes so much out of its regular Twitter hashtag Labour doorstep. But membership is down, catastrophically down, and with it goes the cash. And this is down to two main reasons it's the media thinking at the moment, especially in recent months, and that comes down to Gaza and green policy. Now, I'm not going to go too much of either of these items here. I've covered much of both of these issues in other videos. But the ditching of the years-long commitment of a £28 billion annual green prosperity plan and Labour's obvious ongoing support for Israel and its genocide against Gaza, in no small part tied in many people's minds to bodies like Labour Friends of Israel and Starmer's own Israel lobby backers, funders, who he didn't declare were backing him during his leadership run. Some might remember he was rather reluctant to reveal who was backing him, despite his rivals having declared all of theirs. And this has all added up to a sudden cessation of Labour membership, or decline in it. At its peak, Labour's membership in 2019, under Corbyn, stood at 532,000, biggest party in Europe. It now apparently sits, according to a Labour NEC report out a week or so ago, at 366,604. The reason we know Gaza and the end of the planned Green Prosperity Plan have had an impact is because it was only back in January that Labour's membership was declared to be 390,000. So Labour has lost 23,000 members in just 3 months, roughly equivalent to the losses the party saw for the whole of 2022. Where Gaza is concerned, the fallout is thought to be heaviest amongst Muslim voters, a voter demographic turning fast against Starmer's regime, faster than any other, for quite perfectly understandable reasons, given the situation with Israel and Gaza, but not least the fact that many in that demographic leaving the party was compared at the time by some Labour spokesperson who still to this day remains unnamed, compared them leaving to shaking off of fleas. But now, despite this, The Guardian, who have covered much of this, went to, of all people to speak to about this issue, this funding issue, this membership crisis, to Luke Akehurst, Mr. Israel of the Labour NEC, for a quote, it seems. That'll really please those leaving over Gaza, because they quote him saying, in response to this news, that party membership is still at historically high levels. Labour only had 150,000 members at the end of its last period in office in 2010, he said. The State of the Opinion polls suggest there is no correlation between membership and electoral popularity. That last sentence is correct. I agree with Akehurst there. Those polls do not take into account membership, but it damn well matches when you have less people campaigning for you. And just because the polls don't reflect that doesn't mean it isn't a real issue when it comes to the crunch. Polls are often wrong. I really don't think Labour will get the number of seats predicted on one hand because of hemorrhaging campaign support, hemorrhaging the support of the most experienced of their organisers, support which will have bled off to other campaigns at that, for independents or for the Green Party in many cases. Besides, if Akehurst was being honest, how come an email has been sent out with this graphic on it? Doesn't look good, that, does it? The text accompanying this image reads, "This isn't the update we were hoping to share, but we need your help before the week finishes. Let us explain. Our online donations slowed significantly towards the end of March, and to be honest, it doesn't look like they're picking back up. That's the last thing we need to happen. Please break out the tiniest violin in the world, whose musical notes are so high in pitch they are beyond human ability to hear, because that's how loudly I care." And I expect I speak for a great many other people, former Labour members especially, when I say that. This is what happens when members desert you. Go kiss some more donor backside. You're that bereft of policy anyway. It's not like there isn't room to offer up some for sale to the highest bidder, is there? That is what the Tories do, isn't it? Donors don't give money for nothing, after all. The question should always be, what are they getting in return? And if that isn't policy, well, you've not been paying attention to the last 40-odd years of UK governments then, which has never gone in our favour, has it? Gaza, green policy. There's so much more in the way of reasons for people to leave Labour, not least of which is the fact they are led by a liar. If you want to be the party of donors, go to those donors. Don't beg and plead with members you offer nothing to, insult, sticking by the party out of habit as these few remaining ones seem to be, or fully supporting of the right-wing lurch because they're really Thatcherites instead of Labour, and not really Labour at all. Don't imagine you can be both, because as much as you want to be another Tory party, the Labour membership by and large is totally opposed to that, and rightly so. Labour could well reap what they've sown in putting Starmer up as a fake lefty, only to lurch right because they shouldn't act so surprised that Labour members don't agree or accept that, and take themselves, their voluntary time and their money elsewhere. That is taking over a party on false pretences of conning your way to the top, and you might think you've won, and maybe you will have. But you'll lose membership support and finance along the way, and instead of getting some kind of honeymoon period if and when you take power and form the next government, you'll be hated from day one instead. An army of enthused and inspired members is what Starmer and co inherited. They chose to cast them aside in favour of donors. Nobody buys into the reasons behind the anti-Semitism purges anymore when the party and its leaders are seen as being way too close to Israel now, exposed in no small part by that genocide in Gaza. If you're going broke, you've only got yourselves to blame. Roll on the next set of party accounts so we find out what the truth of the matter is. And that matter of Israel will remain an ongoing issue into any potential election period, I should imagine, too. It's not looking like it's going to end anytime soon. Not enough appetite in the West to do what must be done to stop Israel. They're certainly not coming to the table for negotiations in any meaningful way, having walked away once again in recent talks in Egypt. But even Tories are speaking out against them on this. Tory bigwigs like Alan Duncan the other day calling out some of his fellow members of the Tory party for being too pro-Israel in their leanings. And instead of capitalising on that and going after the Tories too, one Labour Burke at least decided to make the story all about Corbyn instead. Find out all about that story on this video recommendation here, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.